Hello. Okay, we are now on session 30. This is all review of different chapters in the Principles of Protection book. And today we're going to be talking about a couple basic myths. There are hundreds of myths. I chose two of the most basic ones for myths, why people don't want to survive a nuclear war, and what the misconceptions are. Most of the misconceptions, the misinformation, they come from these three books. These are not scientific books, but these are the three books that have really will have been responsible, future past tense, will have been responsible for, I think, millions of deaths because of the misinformation. Here's a couple. By current standards of acceptable radiation doses, it could be 10 years before it's safe to return to the territory in the first 30 miles of fallout. That's Senator Edward Kennedy. And then at a public meeting, and this is what a lot of people think, there's no use surviving a nuclear war because nuclear radiation lasts 1,000 years. So we've learned from the tables, such as this, that it's just not the case. These are actual weapon effects from actual tests above ground. And you can see here, 10 miles away, 5 miles away, at the 5th week, look at where you are, even at 5 miles away. 2 rems a day, 1 rem a day, 0.2 rems a day, assuming there's no precipitation of any kind. Otherwise, this goes way down. So this is the reality, and those three books that we just talked about do not talk about this. They talk about things that are just not true. The other problem, which is what got me to actually write the book, and this really is a problem, this is the National Research Council. You can see what I wrote some notes down here. I had to meet with some of these people. And this is really incredible. This is a technical report, and it talked about the long-term effects of nuclear weapons. This is the another Office of Technology Assessment. And the problem here, this book has scientific data. This book, under the term of editing, reversed all the facts. It took the review of this book, and this reversed all the facts. So when you read this from a government source, you think this is credible, but it isn't. And that's when I had to start questioning everything. And that's why I had to form a technical committee, make sure that I talk to these people in person and get the right data. I mean, engineers tend to be, data rich, and they usually don't let people talk them out of the actual science. So this is what really started my path. This really made it complicated, because after this I couldn't trust any of the government data. The other thing that I found, which is true according to people on technical committee, is the nuclear test. You can get a list of this. I think it's $2 now. And you can get a list of all the nuclear tests tested underground and above ground. And we've talked in a previous session that there are 28 nuclear weapons that were detonated above ground, bigger than Hiroshima, prior to the 1963 Test Ban Treaty, and we're all still here. Here's another myth. Nuclear weapons produce hundreds of times more fatalities and hundreds of times more damage from intense fires than conventional weapons. The reality, Nagasaki, Japan is at the bottom for the list of fatalities from fire in World War II. Hiroshima's in the middle here. So just remember that in Japan during that time period, the materials they use to make their houses is all composed of material that's not fire retardant. It was never considered, and everybody was in a desperate situation. No one really had good medical care. No one, most of the people were starving. So, but if you look at the carpet bombing and the fire bombing, it's far worse than these two nuclear weapons. Myth number 3: shelters don't have to be underground. They really do. The thermal energy is so high, the blast is so high, they really do need to be underground. And here's part of the reason. I didn't talk about that in previous sessions because I don't think it quite fit in. But in a normal structure here, when this 40 psi blast wave hits this structure at a 90-degree angle of incidence, this structure sees almost 4 times that 40 psi. It's 150 psi. So you're not dealing with just that 40 psi because it's hitting a flat surface, vertical surface. Over here, if you have a slanted surface at 40 degrees, this is still down to 140 psi. But if you have something that's domed like this, which almost 90 degrees, you're only talking slightly pressure that's slightly above this 40 psi. So this is why shelters have to be underground if you want a blast shelter. If it's a fall shelter, you don't have to be concerned with this. But the difference in cost between a fallout shelter and a blast shelter is maybe 5%, 10%. So this is important to understand why they have to be on the ground. And the other problem is a lot of people, for some reason, have the reference point of the civil defense shelters of the 60s, and they were horrible. They were absolutely horrible. So that should not be anybody's reference point. They were never properly engineered from the start. They just didn't have the budget.